We try to understand exactly who's doing what, and we try to carve out, make a distinction between the talkers and the doers. You know, there is a lot of innovation theater that is played around. Again, all the company looks great and are on press release, but then beyond the press release, there should be also some walking the talk, and that's exactly what you're trying to understand. It is the work that we are doing, and the other point is that, as you know, there are evolving conditions, change of governance, so corporates that are doing great at a certain point of their life, they might downsize a bit what they've been doing. They're reshaping priorities, they're cutting budgets, you know it. So I think it's nothing, no. And so what we do is try also to gather the knowledge and give it back as in a way that might be structured, the way they structured this report. Again, we have, as you know, a tagline that we put on our shirts, and also, you know, tattoo for some of us, that is also evolve or be extinct. That's it. Or you change, you won't be around. Might be 3 years, might be 5 years, might be 8 years. Knock the hood, whatever you want, but at the end it's gonna happen. And again, the concept of adapting, continuously adapting, surfacing is what you are doing. And so, just to give you some data points. Number one, we made a very, very stupid analysis just to look at the list of the 500 global today and look at the list how it was at the beginning of millennium, 24 years something ago. And there was quite an information that just 2 out of 5 are there, meaning that 3 out of 5 are no longer there. Again, you get the information as much as you want, but that's what it is. Substantially, disruption technically happens, and who was market leaders, not necessarily is going to be there. And again, the problem is that we are in a situation where the evolution, the technology evolution, the strategic drive is continuing to move faster and faster and faster. So probably we might find this 2 out of 5, not in 25 years from now, but maybe in 5 years from now. And so again, the need to be adjusting, readjusting, changing, evolving is probably more imperative than just a good thought. Secondly, also the geography of the world has changed in 25 years. I think you know it, but again, looking at numbers, you get it. I think in 2000 was US, dominating 35%, Japan 22%, Europe, they have UK 7%, France 7%, Germany 7%, and today is US from 35 is going back to 28% in terms of number of companies in the list. China, that was not even in the top 10, is now number 2 with 27%. So maybe something. Japan from 22 is back to 8%. And then also Europe is not exactly doing so well. Some emerging economies are coming up. South Korea, as mentioned. And so just food for thoughts. I don't want to add some additional weight. Second piece of information. Then we made an analysis of the current Fortune 500 global list. And we found it out, again, I like to find coincidences. And this is not a coincidence, it's not a statistical correlation, but it's a coincidence. So we developed together with ICC something that we pompously called the gold standard of open innovation. We love the title, again. And substantially say, okay, how do we define a company that is proficient in open innovation? Because open innovation is a buzzword, it's difficult to measure, right? And substantially, there are different tools that we identify as the building pillars of being a company that's properly running open innovation. Is collaboration with startup, what we call venture client. Is the presence in the main ecosystems, what we call innovation outposts, innovation antennas. Is doing investments into startups for the goal of understanding what they are doing and having a sort of preemptive look or preemptive strike at the most interesting one in order to possibly to include in the diversification patterns, what's called corporate venture capital. Is buying startups, M&A. Is working with early stage startups in multiple forms, might be corporate accelerators, might be venture builders, might be startup studios. Is, as Marco mentioned before, trying to reshape the R&D in a more open way, because again, you might have the best scientists of the world, but again, these matters are not necessarily in your building. And then also is working with all the other employees that are working in the tourism burden of R&D, and substantially try to see if they can contribute to changing the company, to re-innovating the company. That's called entrepreneurship, all the different tools. And then obviously, this is the way companies interface with the outside. But obviously, everything that comes from outside in, find barriers. And barriers are substantially organization, processes, plans, culture, and the lack of the presence of top-level buy-in. And so you can also be super good at intercepting the most interesting technology solution, but again, if nobody wants to do anything, nothing will happen. And then obviously the final goal is to try to measure, and this is quite a still work in progress, what is the outcome of all this stuff? Is technology change? Not really, maybe. Is getting some financial returns? Yes, but not now, maybe later. Is being more sustainable, for sure. Is being more diverse, for sure. But substantially, the final outcome of being a company that is properly running open innovation is strategic transition, strategic change. Is change, is evolution. Because evolution means survival, not change means that you are not being around. And so going back to before, what we found out is try to measure, to adopt this framework on all the global Fortune for Global 500 companies to understand who is doing what. And we found out that removing this gray area, that substantially are the state-owned companies, mostly Chinese, that are a bit different, have the very, very different approach, cannot be properly compared with the others because they work in a different way. But looking at the others, we found out that the one of the 500 that have a comprehensive, holistic approach of innovation that substantially is using most of the tools and also have the internal structure to be able to empower what the fund for are 42%. While there is a 39% of companies, yes, they are trying to do something, but are not exactly super proficient. The part that is particularly interesting to me, despite there is no statistical correlation, because we're talking about two things, is that this 42% is, by the way, pretty close to the percentage that we have here. So I can tell you that if you're doing open innovation, you will be in the list in 5 years from now, but maybe statistics is not involved, but maybe just a feeling. Probably it could be something to be considered, okay? So that is the point. And so now I want to just to explain a bit more what we found out. So this is the two groups of company, the proficient and a bit less proficient. So the one that has become proficient, the one on the way, actually they have the urge to become proficient in open innovation. And looking at the different tools that they are currently using. So substantially you can see that what we call the open innovation leaders, the 41, 42% that are proficient, 100% of them are using the venture client. 90% of them are using corporate venture capital. 80% of them are using entrepreneurship. 76% of M&A is not a strategy. M&A is something that happens, but let's say 76% are acquiring startups in a sort of regular basis. 87% have a presence in the main innovation ecosystems. Just 13% are trying to test this new kid on the block that's called the venture builder. And only 38% have the corporate accelerators. That was one of the dominant tools that was probably, again, if you're looking at those data 10 years ago, probably you see 100% corporate accelerators, okay? Now it's down to 38. If you look at the others, you see that, yes, the one that are on the way to become proficient, let's call them the way, or a bit late in the journey of to staying alive. The tools that are mostly using, because are probably the most immediate to be adopted, are venture client, 1 out of 2, and the entrepreneurship. M&A is something that is become a more occasional activity rather than a strategy. CVC, not really. Accelerators, almost nothing. And venture builder, not yet tested. So that's just to give you a sense. Now, I will walk you tool by tool to show you what are the main trends that we are seeing, very, just the highlights, and then I will leave you to the report for going into the more details. Now, this is another interesting, I have two other pieces of information that I think are interesting. Number one is looking at the industries, sectors. We see that there are some industry that definitely move earlier into the open innovation arena, and some industry that are moving later on. And again, telcos, banks are being the first one to move. Also biotech, life science and pharma, automotive. Again, if you believe, we might probably say that the industry that are being hit more by disruption are the one that actually try to react a bit earlier. Not all of them have been successful, I have to say, but that's what it happened. And then also you see that insurance, energy are next in line. While the late movers, substantially refined oil and gas, retail, that has not changed so much, construction, mining, steel. So these companies looks really, very, not that so much active in the area. And this is, I think, this is fantastic analysis, and you can appreciate if you see what is behind. So we mapped all the innovation challenges that Fortune 500 companies have published. And we try to identify some potential tags in terms of what are the area of interest. Some of them very granular, some of them a bit more broader. And again, if you can find there are two ways of reading of those numbers. Number one is that there are certain topics that are common across industries. And usually the larger the size of the ball, the largest is the frequency of companies are looking at solution. And again, which are the most relevant topics for everybody that you have in your own agenda? Sustainability first, decarbonization, AI. This is the three main topics that everybody's looking around. Then you see there are some collateral topics. You can circularity is relevant, robotics, and then we go into vertical topics that are becoming addressed by more and more industries. So mobility is a good example. Mobility is not just longer automotive play, is a play that is played by many industries. And then you can go granular, and understand what are the typical areas around those blocks that are addressed. So the very interesting analysis, I'll leave it to you to take a look at, but I think they can tell you a lot, also benchmarking what you're looking and what the others are looking. As mentioned, this is a snapshot of the presentation we'll do in the afternoon, because today we also publish another report that is this one. The title is Innovation or Isolation. This is because it's mostly looking at which area of the world are currently leading the innovation scene versus others. And again, just to give you two data points, and then we'll deep dive in the afternoon. Number one is we mapped all the scale-ups of the world. Scale-ups are started to be able to raise $1 million. And so we mapped more than 90,000 scale-ups across the globe. And cumulative, you're talking about a 3.7 trillion economy in terms of capital raised. But if we look where the game is played, so substantially, which is the percentage per continent of the scale-ups, is the light blue ball, and which is the percentage of the capital that's being raised, you can find that substantially is a North American play, I would say a US play. 43% of the scale-ups, 48% of the capital is North America. APAC follows, 28% of scale-ups, 32% of capital. Again, for the European in the room, that exactly is our play, because technically speaking, we have 21% of the scale-ups and 40% of the capital. So not that many, and badly undercapitalized. And there are emerging regions that are playing the 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. We'll see more, and we'll see how this map will evolve down that way. Second things, just to give you some, we have the analysis per country by country, just to give you some data point. So the US, substantially, was talking about 37,000 scale-ups, Of them, the one that are raised not 1 million, but 100 million are 3,000. The one that are raised 1 billion are 223. So China is half of that here and 1/3 of that here. And then if you look at where there is, if you look at the percentage below, substantially how many scale-ups per 100,000 population, and which is the percentage of the capital raised on the GDP of the country, just to give you a sense of the relevance of the innovation economy in each specific country. You see that there are countries like the US, we're talking about 6%. Countries like Israel, we're talking about 22% of the GDP in innovation. And country like the European one, France and Germany, is 1.5, 1.3%. Just to give you the sense of how much is they are investing into the future versus what they're currently investing into today. And this is some interesting data. And the further analysis that we have done is putting, this is a regional level, because another big problem that we have today is that innovation is not a national policy, it's a local policy. Because innovation is local, innovation is played at city level, it's not played at country level. Today we'll show you some number that we substantially are talking about that 75% of the innovation economy of France is in Paris, it's not all around France. So there is a gigantic agglomeration of innovation that is very worrying for all the other places, by the way. And so if we look at the regional analysis, there is one place that is totally separate from all the others, called Silicon Valley. And then there are others that are following. We can find 3 other American ones. We call it, we identify 4 stages. The stand-up, substantially very, very few scale-ups are produced every year. The startup phase, the scale-up phase, and the star phase. And then each of these phases has an early stage and late stage. For stars, we call it nova, supernova, because we like the analogy. But still, the ones that are in the top elite club of places where there is a huge agglomeration of innovation, we're talking about a dozen ecosystems in the world. I would say Silicon Valley and 11 others. And the 11 others are 3 are from China. So we're talking about Beijing, Guangdong, and Shanghai. Then we have other Americans, New York, the East Coast, and Boston, and LA, and Texas that is showing up at distance. Japan with Tokyo, Seoul, South Korea, just moving to this stage, and Canada with Ontario. And then in Europe, there is only France with Paris that is in the top group. And then we move down, 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 and you can find all these smaller economy of agglomeration, smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And just to give you a sense, for moving from here to there is a 25 years path. From Tunis to Silicon Valley, it takes 25 years. The problem in Silicon Valley is not standing, but is running, and so it's very difficult to catch up. But we have noticed, and there's some other interesting data, that there are some ecosystems that are able to cross the stages, that typically is 3-4 years for each of these blocks, in 2 years. So New York move from year to year in 2 years versus an average of 4.5 years. And we have some emerging ecosystems are running strong. So it's important having policy of supporting innovation might definitely help ecosystems to transition faster. Going back on the different models and give you just some data points. Number one is one of the characteristics of what we call corporate startup stars is that they have a presence in the main ecosystems where, again, if you've seen the map before, you should know, substantially Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, we see that we have 217 of the Fortune 500 with an innovation stable presence there, innovation boots on the ground, people just hunting for innovation there with a stable presence. And then the one that follows substantially are Israel with 121 out of 500 that are present in Israel, despite the circumstances. And then there are some other, again, on the right hand of the slide, you can see when is the time of this outpost has been open. You've seen substantially Silicon Valley, obviously has been one of the first to attract attention. There are some others that are currently pretty trending now. New York is one of them, New York and Boston. You see there are most of the openings are in the last 4 or 5 years. Singapore is getting some attention. and some others are getting some attention as well. So just to give you a sense, but again, there is strong correlation from density of scale-ups, the presence of top companies over there with an innovation dedicated presence. There should be a reason, I assume. Secondly, entrepreneurship. Why is it so important to involve your own people into innovation? Because most of them know your company or your industry very well, and most of them might be also have a strong entrepreneurial attitude. Probably you don't ask them. And so again, we noticed that asking is a good idea, and involving is a good idea, and particularly help also to improve the cultural level and reducing the barriers for bringing innovation from outside. A couple of trends. Number one is keep in mind, and I need this, I think, where is Emilio? Over there. Again, Enagas is one of the first to launch an entrepreneurship program with your former CEO. Again, at a certain point, he told me, you know, at a certain point, we involve everybody, but more than 5–10%, we can go there. And actually, our data support exactly that. There is a limit to involve your people. Technically, the one with an entrepreneurial attitude of 5–10%. So don't try to go beyond. And so find ways to bring also keeping the machine up and running, but need to fuel with some external ideas. And we see that some of the programs are opening from external entrepreneurs, some of them also to startups. So the entrepreneurship program open to the outside. This is one of the novel trends. And then the other important piece is something valuable come out, you need to get ready to deploy, and that you need a venture builder. And so the venture builder as a continuation of entrepreneurship is another interesting trend. And you can find some metrics to share to see, technically speaking, on average, a Fortune 500, an entrepreneurship program typically collect from 250 to 500 ideas per year. And at the end, the one that are being presented to the top manager ranging from 3 to 8, and the one deployed are from 0 to 3. This is the numbers that you need to keep in mind. Deploy only if something is really valuable. Secondly, accelerators. It's definitely showing their age. I think you see the numbers. I think are pretty clear. There are the more that are shutting down, that there are one that are opening. So there should be a meaning of that. So we know that I will not spend more than 10 seconds here. Rest in peace. Venture builder, they are on the rise, but there are a couple of buts. Number one is that it's not that easy to do it. And I think the more I look at the tool, the more I think that is something that is more close to a project financing rather than to an innovation factory. Because at the end, you are building up things that are very, very different, idiosyncratic, and you need totally different approaches. And so number one is it's complicated to be done. It's difficult to be more, or maybe also if you are being successful with one initiative, it's difficult to do the second one because it might be totally different approaches. And so it's very nice, the idea of having a sort of validation engine that is able, this comes from Siemens, by the way, as a term, able to understand what could be the potential deployment path, rather than having something that should work that way in all the possible cases. And by the way, when you go into building, it drink like a there is no tomorrow. So you cannot be shy. If you need to build, you need to put the proper budget to support it. People and capital, people and capital. Doing something that is ambitious with no resources is better not to do it. And then the other point is, again, we have also some companies that start to do that and abandon it. And so that's something you should probably need to understand is probably a very, very tough game, and so probably some corporate decided to abandon it. We have many examples of companies, also big names, that decided to shut it down 2–3 years thereafter. Just government change, budget restriction, or probably also the waning confidence that the tool is probably so hard and so difficult to be properly implemented. I don't have an answer. We'll tell you in 3 to 5 years, but by now, keep the doubt in your mind. Venture client, easy peasy, it works. Is the one that I think is no longer a black box. You implement whatever your condition, 18 months, 24 months, you get results instead of POCs, pilots, and then a percentage of them goes into adoption. Obviously, that requires a lot of the ability to work with the business unit, because if the business is not involved, nothing will happen. And keep in mind that this innovation in companies is something that produce result in a small percentage of the cases. And the real impact is very, very, is not evenly distributed, but as a distribution, there's probably one take alls and the other are just some nice tries. And again, this is Ranja over there. This is one of my favorite examples to make, talk to her, to give you some cool numbers to understand how it works. And the other interesting topic is that venture client is becoming probably the main pillars of the open innovation building. And so some of companies are melting venture client with CVC. Again, I have Maersk over in front of me, so this is a good example. Some other, I'm trying to use the venture client also for working with the R&D, in the concept of open R&D. Some others are using it more and more also as a market intelligence tool. Because again, being out scouting for solution, you can also start producing landscaping analysis, trends, etc., etc. Corporate venture capital is a hell of a tool, and it works. I think the better definition of corporate venture capital comes from Ingo Rosenthal of Robert Bosch Venture Capital. Say this is a market intelligence tool at no cost for the company. Unfortunately, there are some conditions. The first condition is that you need to properly size it. And again, if you look at the sizing of the CVC vehicle across the Fortune 500, again, you can tell me that it's not exactly something you can do with your spare money in your pockets. So for having a proper play, the game, again, the current sizing is between 250, 500, 750 million. More and more companies are going above the billion. Also, because you are competing with VC, they don't care. You say, oh, I'm a corporate, I have less funds than you. No, they don't care. Again, the competition is there and you need to play with the same weapons. And unfortunately, we're talking about billion-dollar funds that move at speed light, and you, most of the time, are not as fast. So this is the first condition. The second condition is in order to be market intelligence hell of a tool at no cost, you need to keep it playing for 8 to 10 years with no regrets. And the model of balance sheet, rather the model of a separate fund doesn't help. Because again, when conditions change, governance change, yes, you have the tool, but you no longer the budget. Yes, you're off balance, I'm flexible, if I need more, I ask more, I'm with you. But it's also true that if you are, your allocation depends on the budget allocation annually. If something goes south in the company, you don't get a dollar, and you are just playing the show with no actors. And so it's very, very difficult to be done. Food for thoughts. And then again, in terms of maturity, you can have some data. But again, more to the report. Finally, the M&A. Again, Marco was working at Google. And again, how many startups Google was buying? If we look at the frequency of startup acquisition of the Fortune 500, we find some data that are not exactly in the same sizing. And you see that there's a clear difference between the average number of Silicon Valley Fortune 500 companies. They buy 12, 15 startups on average per year. If you move to the US, it's 3, 4, and if you go to Europe, it's 1, 2 per year. Substantially, an average Fortune 500 company buy a startup per year on average. So it's something very, very occasional, opportunistic. It's not a strategy. And again, if you look at the list of the gorgers of startups, you find the usual names that are not exactly European ones. Okay, you know it. There are many reasons of that. Culture, probably, attitude, compliance. It's so difficult to buy a company with a negative EBITDA for 10 million. But that is what it is. So this is just a snapshot of all the analysis we put together. Is more and more and more in the report. Again, you can download it. It's there for you and for deep diving.